one of the things we've been talking about for as long as we've been working together is how important asking the right questions are, good questions, and really listening. Um, I've been working with an organization now who asked me probably 6 or 8 months ago to do an organizational review. You and I have talked about this because when you're looking about those projects that are, as our organization doing the right things, who should we ask? Who should we talk to? How willing is the organization to listen to the results, and how much effort do you want to put into doing that? So we've been doing this work for a long time. Talk to me about why and how asking those questions, why it's important and how to do it so that it's really effective.
Yeah, well, there's two really common scenarios that I think we've seen a lot. The first is you go in and they want to do a strategic plan, but they have no idea why. So, do you know what I mean? Like someone's new in the role and they're not exactly sure what to do, so they need a direction, or they know something's wrong, but they don't really have a sense of why they're doing something. So they just want to do something or be seen to do something, which I think is a step in the right direction. If it's someone who has a lot of energy, they've got a lot of motivation, they want to affect a positive change, but sometimes they don't know what direction to even look in. So that's quite challenging sometimes as someone who's external to know what direction to point them in if it's a bit broad or amorphous. So sometimes it's about narrowing stuff down. The other thing that happens probably even more frequently is people have a very specific problem or issue in mind, but they want to ask a big question to get around it. Because you see this all the time in organizations where there's one person or there's one policy or there's one department that is an issue and has been an issue for a long time. But people are usually conflict averse. Even people who don't mind being a bit confrontational often have, that's a challenging situation to be in, to be the person to have to deal with that or have that difficult conversation, or in some case, get rid of the person who's a serious problem. So sometimes people ask big questions when they want you to eventually find out what that one little problem is that they've got in the back of their mind. So that's usually the initial process, is figuring out what's going on there or what the intention is. Ideally, the best clients or the best situation to be in is when they've got a clear idea of what's going on and why they want to use the process, right? But sometimes we see these kind of different examples of how and when you have to navigate to get to what they really want to do is, because we've had the conversation often before of knowing that a client is never going to be happy unless they know what they want.
Yes. Yeah, and it is really interesting, isn't it? Because, we all provide information in layers.
Yeah.
And so no matter how good you are at asking questions, you think you understand because you've asked a series of questions, but you're at layer one. Mm-hmm. And, and sometimes all of us, we've thought about things and then we've moved on. So you ask questions about, where do you want this to go? What's your result? How do you want to measure and evaluate a strategic plan? Do you want to measure and evaluate? And do you have any issues or concerns that I need to know about before we start this? And finally, who do you want me to talk to? And will you listen to what I hear?
Yeah.
And I think a really good example of that is we did a very large strategic plan for Okanagan College, probably 15 years ago now, one of our first. And one of the issues that came up when we were doing it is the issue of parking. It's probably every public institution. And this is 15 years ago, and we had issues with parking. And one of the issues was the senior leadership team had designated parking spots and no one else did. So really early on in the process, we went in and said, there's a couple things you could do right away. You could stop having designated parking spaces for your senior leaders. And they changed the policy within a week. Mm-hmm. And lots of people who had brought it up were surprised because I said, we'll do as much as we can to provide sort of the immediate, tactical things to people so they can make changes. And there were some other questions because it's a campus, there are 5 campuses. And so there were some things that were coming up from the more remote rural campuses rather than Kelowna campus. And so there were some things that could be managed fairly immediately about things like mail delivery. So, but the question
And that's,
is,
yeah, one of the things that come up, sorry to interrupt, but that's one of the things is because, like you're saying, with different layers and different levels of stuff, is it makes it a lot easier if the organization is willing to change at a number of levels and is willing to look at things at a number of levels, right? Because if you have those really kind of clear, practical, concrete, kind of minor annoyances sometimes for some people, but if you can change those early on and say, okay, this is a minor problem, there, we fixed it, it's going to make the rest of your process so much easier because people are looking for those cues to see if you're listening to them, if the senior leadership team is listening to them, and if the information that they're providing is going to go anywhere. And I don't think people are explicitly testing you, but there's a level of that, right? Especially if you're looking at big, diverse, broad organizations with lots of different people. People will see if engaging in a process, especially a long research or strategic planning process, is going to have a result for them.